don't worry, I'm not gonna make you watch the whole process. I'm not that evil. Hello and welcome to Elven Isle and our starter base, where we jump right into the project we started last episode, which has to do with this open trapdoor which kinda misses the point by being open, and that has to do with our Redstone Hall. And in between episodes I've done a lot more digging as I came to the conclusion that what I dug last episode was way too small. And as you can see, or maybe not really see because it's pitch black, yeah, that one torch did it all. I've mocked something up which is kinda the first attempt of the design for the interior, just to get my thoughts together. As also the material is definitely not what we're gonna use, but rather tough. And with that, I think we can start. For the most part, I think I will be using tough bricks. Some smooth bricks here and there. Same goes with the walls. What do we need? Also some stairs. Do we need slabs? I think we also need slabs. And we will start out with quite a chunky base to give it all, you know, structural integrity, as it's very important in that game. And then of course it gets thinner with just a cross shape and a torch here in the middle, so we don't have any spawns. And on the sides we will use the wall bricks, because it gives it a little bit of a roundish shape. Of course not perfectly round, but it doesn't have to be. But it just gives it a bit more life, more texture, more shape. And that almost all the way to the top. Certainly we want to have a third row, before we then alternate to polished stuff. Maybe do those first, otherwise I can't reach them. Before we come back to bricks. And then towards the corners it crops out. Then while we have in the middle, in total 4 columns. Why are there so many? I thought it would only be 3. Apparently it's 4 now. We have a half column. I know there is a word for that. But I've only ever had 2 lectures in architecture, so don't expect me to remember that word. And if we remove the scaffolding now, I think you can clearly see the idea. One thing I haven't decided yet is what to fill in the middle parts. For the floor, however, I'm gonna use the smooth stone that I prepared. Because I don't want to have too many lanterns here. I want to have it kinda moody, but still not too dark. Because of that, I think a lightly colored floor would be very useful, and also helps to keep your focus on the ground where all the redstone machinery is gonna go. After all, even though it's a kind of a big hall, it's not really it's not supposed to be an imposing hall. And now I just have to do what we did here over and over again until the whole hall, is that how you say that? Until the hall in its entirety is complete. And I think that asks for a quick time lapse. See you on the flip side. Despite calculating how much stuff I would need, I ran out halfway through. Don't know how that happened. Apparently my math was very bad, but luckily tough isn't difficult to get, so I mined a bit more and completed all of our pillars. But we still have to fill in the middle sections. And in a way, I'm thinking about using also just tough there, as I don't want that to be too fancy. A ring of blocks, a ring of slabs, and a square of blocks to finish it off. Maybe. Let's try a few different textures here. The issue is that because it's also pretty dark up there. The final steps are very hard to see. It looks more like one blob. So we might have to get something different in the middle. And if it's just a different texture. We could just use the default, which isn't too bad. But also kind of boring. And then we have these funky textures. Oh, I like them actually. They look like, and once again I don't know what the exact term for them is, but in 19th century buildings, especially train stations, you often see in the ceilings those square things, exactly like that. Basically, just a different color, more sandstone-ish. But we have an option more. No, definitely not. It's a weird texture and I like weird textures because you can do weird things with them. But I think those boxes are way more useful in this case. Yep, that's what I'm gonna do with all the other 9 fields. But I think we can do that without a time lapse. So I will just look down to the pillar in front of me. And if we look up again, all the roof is done. Now there's still one obvious missing part, and that is a wall. So why don't we do that again and stare at that ugly gravel wall? Even though andesite, stone and gravel kind of works nicely together. Still, we stare at that wall, well, then we're gonna look down. And if we look up again, the walls are filled with some patchwork, consisting of spruce bark, dark oak bark, stripped dark oak bark, or wood, how it's actually called, and dark oak planks, as I think they go together nicely. And with that, the bare empty hall is finished. So let me put all that stony stuff away, as we won't need it. At least not right now. But what we do need now is some obsidian. I briefly mentioned it in this episode, after talking a bit more about it in the last one, that, there's a stair missing. Give me a moment. Alright, much better. Where was I? Yeah, redstone. This is my redstone hall, and here we will build all our farms. However, for automatic farms we need fancy things like observers, and for observers we need quartz, and for quartz we have to head into the nether. And originally I was thinking about building a fancy building for the nether portal, but I couldn't come up with a good design or with an idea to begin with. And as this is our headquarters of getting access to resources pretty much, I think it would just make sense that we also have a nether portal here. So why not just build a small portal right into this wall? But does it need to be taller? I think that actually works. And as it's buried into the wall, I actually will be skipping the corners. Don't like to do that, but that obsidian was so awkward to get. And then what about the backdrop? I think that does the trick for now. We can always change it later. Well, then we need some flint and steel, and we need to light it. Okay. Alright, let's equip our golden crown with mending so it never breaks, hopefully. And the only thing we actually need is some quartz, so we're just gonna grab some quartz and head back out of there again. Oh, fingers crossed. Okay. Okay, it's in the middle of 2 biomes, that's good, and we have easy access to blackstone, which is awesome, as I never really had the chance to build with that, so that is good. But it's also dangerous here. I mean, there's some quartz, but I'm not gonna climb up there. Yeah, this is awkward. This is a very awkward spawn. There I think are some wastes. I don't like that. Oh, and there's a ghast. I think we're fairly safe here, right? I mean, I do have a bow, but not a good one. And my aim is terrible. Good. Oh, maybe we should look up there. Because I see a crimson forest, which also isn't particularly safe, but let's forget about safety for a minute. Okay, it's just some roots. Okay, that's odd. They're really paying no attention to me, which is... I mean, I don't want to complain. They don't need to pay any attention to me. Yep, just doesn't care. But there's some quartz. We don't need tons of it either. As long as I don't dig myself into lava, I'm fine. Why am I panicking? It's just the nether. Just the nether. Nothing to be afraid of. Just some silly mobs running around. Oh, and where's my shield? Such an expert, you know? I even brought it. Oh boy. Okay, that's a hole into the abyss. Let's not fall down there. There's some quartz, but also a deep drop. And it's not lava down there, nope. But a hungry skeleton. At least we've got that going. Where did... Oh, okay, that answers my question. That answers my question. Okay, thank you. There at least are good amounts of quartz. And I think after that we're just heading out of here. Even though there's nothing I need to be afraid of, you know. We are experts here. Trained experts. I think that's enough. That's enough for today. That's enough for me. I will head out and go back home, where it's safe and warm and cozy. I mean, it's also warm here. Why are now all the slimesicles at my portal? What on earth? Oh, is this... Oh no, oh gosh. Okay, I was not ready for that. And there go 20 levels. What on earth? Alright. If you play me dirty, then you get dirty too. Alright, the pigmen also multiply. Awesome. I'm a bit annoyed about the XP. But maybe, you know, can get a bit more now. Ooh. The second issue besides quartz was of course our lack of iron. And I've did a bit of strip mining in between the clips. However, as it's quite unrealistic that we get all farms finished today, so that iron should be plenty for the first one, and the first one will indeed be the most intricate one, and that will be a kelp farm. And what I have in mind is not just an automatic harvesting kelp farm that would probably go somewhere here, but what I actually want is a self-sustained dried kelp block farm. What that means is we need a minecart to bring all that harvested wet kelp to a furnace array, then to an autocrafter, and the output of that autocrafter we then have to split. One part of it has to go back into the furnace array, and the other part into the output chest, where we can take as much of the lovely stuff as we need. And now for a little bit of honesty between you and me, I've never done something like that. And anyone who knows anything about redstone should be warned that my contraption will probably be pretty cringe, but as long as it works, I'm happy. So, I mean, we have 5 sections, and I was thinking of having all the farms itself on this side, while the furnace and later on also an automatic item sorter for stuff we get from caving or mining is also supposed to go on this side. That means we have to get the minecart from one to the other, but that could be quite awesome. I think first of all we just dig it out a little bit. I'm crying with this inventory, I'm really crying and dying. Yeah, we need lots of rails. Didn't I had a stack of sticks somewhere, so. That circle basically, but that is where a busy minecart will collect all the goodies. Simply put a torch there, and above that, the coarse dirt will go. And then it'll be flush with the window. In the middle, of course, we have to fill it in with glass, so we don't have anything falling on those blocks where there's no minecart. I'm not a redstoner, as you can tell. It must be something like that. Ha, here we go. And we need 18. Oh boy. The observer then goes in the middle. Yep, and that's the wrong way around. And then all we need is some redstone dust, right? And then they all should... Yep. I've now gone ahead and finished both sides, as well as a roof, and for lighting I simply use jack-o'-lanterns, as this is really the best block option we have in the early game. Maybe we exchange it with something nicer later on, but I think for now that's fine. And with glass, I'm thinking of maybe going with purple dyed glass, because it's kind of similar to the portal. And then we can fill in the kelp, even though I'm not too sure how actually that's supposed to go. I may or may not have forgotten that items actually float in the water since 1.13. Okay, yeah. The question is, initially, when they are harvested, they fall down, right? Before they start floating. So maybe it will still work. We have to test it out. The farm itself so far is done. We don't have a minecart yet running, but we can change... Okay, I need another chest. Yep, the monster is growing and slowly eating me alive. So in theory, we have to give it a little nudge. Here we can remove this block safely. Good. Okay, yeah, most get actually collected. Well, in that case, all of them. I think for now it works. Okay, with that I think part 1 of this farm is successfully done. Now comes the difficult bit. Or maybe first of all the not quite so difficult bit. We have to get the minecart from one side to the other. And for that we need a bridge. And I'm thinking of using some trapdoors. However, they might block too much of the visibility. I'm also not too fond about those stairs. Maybe just use trapdoors on the side of the blocks. Here we have our 3 options. I'm not too sure. For some reason, I'm not a big fan of the copper here. I think I will go with the spruce. Alright, I think that looks rather neat. Having spruce trapdoors on the side. And instead of dark oak slabs, copper trapdoors on the bottom, though it's not quite as bulky. And, you know, structurally speaking, I think it makes sense to have a copper beam going all the way underneath the track. I've now removed the minecart from underneath completely. Because of that, I also could exchange the coarse dirt with sand, which looks much nicer in my opinion, and put the railway line all up there. And how that works is pretty simple. We have just a water stream on top of the water columns, which push all or most of the kelp, as some things tend to get stuck down there, unfortunately, but most of the stuff gets pushed over here. And these hoppers all face into this one, where we have a minecart loading station. And if we just put something in here, I pull out a signal of the hopper, and as long as something is inside the hopper, there's no signal going to the powered rail. But as soon as the hopper is empty, the whole cycle reverts, and there is a signal going to the power rail, and the minecart goes off again. And it goes over that bridge, but currently it just dead ends over there. And while building this, I just thought, why not maybe in the middle? Instead of having it one bridge that spans the entire width, have something of a support structure, which then could also help us to hide this lever in the middle. Yeah, that's just what happens. Yeah, and I think that is everything that's needed here. Alright, some final amendments to the farm. As the kelp tended to get stuck on the walls, and with a collecting system up above, we don't need the glass divider in the middle anyway, I removed it. So there's less chance for kelp to get stuck. But I've also noticed that kelp sometimes flies out of the water below the hoppers and gets stuck on the rail. So I've decided to simply use a hopper minecart rather than a chest minecart, which is a bit more expensive and has less storage capacity. But as we only have one item, The 5 stacks is more than enough, and it collects everything up that otherwise would just despawn on the rails. So after all of that was pretty easy. Actually pretty easy, but still fiddly. Fingers crossed. I will also get the other side done without losing my sanity. So for the other side we would have 3 furnaces. They're not meant to be accessed, that's why they're fairly high up, but that gives a good visibility. And on said furnaces we put a hopper each and connect that up to the rail line. The difficult part, however, is to spread out the kelp evenly amongst all 3 furnaces. And currently that only happens due to the minecart swooshing back and forth and not stopping at all. But I'm not sure if that will actually work the way I hope it does. It almost stopped it. In the next step we have to get the stuff out of the furnace again then. Which means more hoppers, which means more iron. And we are running frighteningly low on that. Oh, I feel like I've aged a couple of years. I constantly had to run back and forth through the mines to get more iron, more redstone. But I think I have now something that works. First and foremost, I substituted the furnaces for smokers, as obviously everyone knows that except for me. Smokers are the go-to smelter for kelp. And then we have this madness here. Let me give you a quick rundown of what's happening. Up on top we have the minecart from the Kelp Farm, which brings the kelp in and somewhat evenly distributes the kelp over the 3 hoppers. And then we have a rafter down here, which, because of the 2 observers acting like a compact little clock, is constantly firing, but of course has to wait until... That's not good. Yeah, that is still debris from building. Alright, it has to wait until, of course, it's completely full with dried kelp, so it can form a kelp block, which then gets down to this minecart, and that minecart distributes the kelp blocks over these hoppers, which are the input for the fuel, and everything that does not get consumed by those ends up here. And while this end of the minecart line is connected to a clock and, yeah, excuse that repeater spam, eventually I want to replace all this with something I've seen Polisent Moon using, but I'm pretty sure also other people have used that before, of an armor stand on top of a redstone ore. Acting like... pretty much like a clock, but more random, but the randomness isn't a big issue in this farm. It's just much more neat, and also the intervals will be longer, because the sooner it starts off again, the more of an issue we will have with equally distributing the kelp blocks. And if also the redstone ore armor stand is still too fast, I mean that currently is way too fast, we might try an ether hopper clock, but more hoppers means more iron, and I'm currently very low on iron, so for now the repeater spam has to do. But on the other end, we once again have the signal from the hopper, which tells us if there's stuff going through it or not. So that everything that's still in the minecart ends up here. Which on the other side is the output for finished dried kelp blocks for use elsewhere. However, talking about evenly distributing stuff, you see that it's not quite working. One of the biggest issues is that our kelp farm is just didn't produce enough. So I modified it slightly. As you can see, we have that V arrangement. I got inspired by Pixel Riv's Kelp Farm he showcased in his survival guide series. Yes, as you can see, we have that V arrangement, so we have doubled the amount of stuff it can produce, and I'm also thinking of mirroring it back to the other side. Because of that, we also had to change the minecart arrangement here, and once again I have a repeater spam clock here, but also this will be the perfect opportunity for an armor stand on top of a redstone ore block. But now this other side is completely clean and we can mirror that without any issues. And as you also notice, we have now observers on top of each and every piston. Yeah, I rediscovered an issue and found out that kelp blocks can not only turn flowing water that is already a full block into a water source, but also flowing water that is not a full block. And of course, on top we are relying on that for collecting the kelp, and if the kelp grows all the way to the top, then we have an issue. Because of that we need observers all along, but they don't use any iron. Just quartz, redstone and cobblestone, so cheap enough for us. And as you've seen, sometimes the kelp overshoots on the track, but that's not an issue. And if it shoots behind the track, well, we can solve that by just closing it off. But let's get it jump started with some coal. And if everything goes well, this machine should now continuously produce without ever stopping. If it stops, then we certainly need to double the farm up or lengthen the clock, because that might also be a big issue currently. So the kelp blocks will not be evenly distributed, and probably the later twos, they will just eventually go out. But that really is a clock issue. Maybe would I have enough iron for an ether hopper clock? Because on that side it's kind of important. Alright, I think I did it. That of course is the well-known ether hopper clock, but the issue would be that it's half of the time on and the other half of the time off. So we pull out the signal from both sides and catch the brief moment where it turns off, invert it, put it into a repeater so it's long enough for the minecart to go off. And we have a fully functioning farm now. Well, not really. As a temporary solution, I now blocked the last two smokers by simply putting items in the hoppers above and below that the smoker doesn't like. But as you can see, yeah, even for one smoker our supply is not enough. So my plan is not only to mirror it and double it that way, but also to add another chamber on this first wall, as we just simply need so much kelp supply, and maybe that will be enough for 3 smokers. We'll have to see. Unfortunately, however, as I'm now very short on pretty much everything, we are missing not only iron but also redstone, as well as quartz. I don't think we will finish up this today. In fact, taking into account that I already spent an absurd amount of time on this episode, most of it in resource collecting if you believe it or not, we simply have to make a cut here. And before I can get myself back into the mines, we definitely need that Fortune 3. For that we need more XP levels, and for that we need a skeleton farm. So I think next episode we will deal with that. Anyways, if you made it that far in the video, I appreciate you very much, as this surely was a bit of an odd one. I hope it was still entertaining to watch me struggle with redstone and resource gathering, but I still hope that next episode, even though we will have another underground project, we might see a bit more daylight than we've seen this episode. After all, I'm an elf, not a dwarf, but still it was quite a very fun project, and I'm certainly looking forward to doing more projects of this kind. I hope you do too. If you do, then leave your ideas for future redstone contraptions in the comments. Take care, and see you soon. Bye!